Friday. This is Prometheus, Punching the Walls of Reality, the greatest website you've probably never been to.
I'm Agamemnon, and here today we're with FubarDuck.
What's up?
Alright, I guess we'll just hop right into it. You know, the most curious question is, why the name FubarDuck?
FubarDuck is... It doesn't really have any significant meaning to it. A lot of people are disappointed by this answer, actually. But I've been using the name since, I guess, around like 6th grade.
Okay.
Right around when... That's around the time when I was able to use the internet and for the first time and stuff. And I needed a name that was different from what I was using on the local bulletin board systems.
Yeah.
Because on local BBSs, I had like really long names.
Okay.
But like when the internet was coming around and I started using IRC, I guess that was around 1994. IRC had a 9-character limit on names.
Okay.
So I needed a name that was 9 characters or less, and I needed something like unique and interesting that nobody else would take.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I was young. It's hard to remember, but I was thinking at the time.
There you go. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I assumed it was something like you were drunk at a frat party and you just had FubarDuck.
Oh no, it was well before that age where any of those things happened. I must have been 11 or 12 years old. So.
Okay. A little too young for frat parties.
Are you originally from Austin?
I was actually born in Austin,
Okay.
but I was raised in Northeast Texas.
Okay.
Out in the boonies, a lot of nowhere cities that people have never heard of.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm from. Actually, I lived very close to Texarkana, believe it or not. That was actually the closest mall to us.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
I spent a lot of my early arcade days playing in Texarkana at Aladdin's Castle.
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
okay.
Oh, they have the Aladdin's Castle there
Did.
too. That's awesome.
Yeah, they had one back in Eagle Pass.
Yeah.
Aladdin's Castle over there, down there.
They used to have one in Phoenix. I remember some kid bit me on the hand.
Yeah, Texarkana and Longview actually were the 2 places I played the most growing up.
That's awesome.
So what initially brought you back to Austin?
I moved back here to go to college at UT. So I moved back to Austin about 12 years ago now.
Okay, nice. What do you major in college?
I majored in Japanese and philosophy,
Okay, makes sense.
liberal arts.
Okay, that's
Nice.
awesome.
What made you decide to stay here?
I stayed here at first just because, well, let me preface this by saying originally I thought I was going to move back to Japan
Okay.
because I lived there for a year as a student and I thought I wanted to work and live there.
Yeah.
So I basically got a job after I graduated, to, just to pay the bills.
Yeah.
Right.
And in the meantime, I was applying for jobs in Japan. So the job I was doing after I graduated was nothing related to my major or anything like that.
Yeah.
It was just like a tech job in an IT company. So that was sort of something I was doing to kill time. And of course that ended up not happening.
Yeah.
And now this is happening. So
Yeah.
it was sort of an unexpected change of plans.
Actually, yeah, I was just gonna ask you. So, what possessed you to start ArcadeUFO?
Well, first let me respond to the way you asked the question originally. Some people may not know this, but I actually didn't quit my job to start the arcade.
Okay.
I was still working full-time for the first 2 years that I was running the arcade
Okay.
because I didn't know if it would be a success or if it would even be here 2 years after I started it.
Gotcha.
So the schedule at my job when I started ArcadeUFO was I was working 4 days a week, 12-hour shifts,
Okay.
and then I had 3-day weekends. So basically I spent my whole 3-day weekends on this,
Okay.
and then the rest of the time I spent at work. So needless to say, it was a very busy lifestyle.
I
And
can imagine.
it was rewarding, but it was very tiring, and it was a lot of work. So after about the first 2 years, maybe 2.5 years, it seemed like it wasn't going anywhere, and so I looked at everything to see if I can make it work. And I was like, well, I just want to focus on this for a while and see if I can take it where I want to and make it work. So around late 2010 is when I quit my job, my regular full-time day job, and since then I've just been focusing on the arcade and fighting game community. So.
Awesome.
I feel like it's paid off having quit your original job.
There's definitely a lot of things that I'm doing now that I wouldn't have been able to do had I not freed up that time. So I don't regret the decision at all.
Right.
There is still, I mean, there's still more that has to be done.
Yeah,
So
yeah, no,
you know,
totally.
it's definitely not an easy ride, but I'm glad I took this option.
That's awesome.
Sorry, did you want me to talk any more about starting the arcade or?
Actually, yeah, I would like to
Yeah,
hear about that.
Okay. So basically, ArcadeUFO was started because Einstein's arcade closed.
Yeah.
And Einstein's was, of course, the previous arcade. It was the arcade that it was my home arcade, so to speak. And when I moved to Austin in 2000, there were maybe 9 arcades in town.
Yeah.
8 or 9, and Einstein's was basically the last arcade that was actually an arcade, like not just all kiddie games.
Right.
So
yeah.
when Einstein's went away, I was extremely devastated by that. Actually, I heard the news on the way to my job,
Oh wow.
and it was just like a total bummer. Like I couldn't get anything done at work. Like it was all I was thinking about. So that weekend, I met with a bunch of my friends who, you know, were also regulars of Einstein's, and we discussed options and talked about, like, you know, could we actually do something? Could we make this work in some other way, or actually try to carry on the torch, or what should we do? And there were several discussions had, mostly at my apartment and at Spider House.
Oh, okay.
And between those two places, we had a lot of like Goonies type meetings where we discussed the future.
Yeah.
And after a few weeks, I decided I was going to get just a few of the machines from Einstein's and put them in a different location, not here.
No,
Wow.
I think I remember you had them over at Tech Republic.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was happening while I was looking at real estate and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
And then this place came about sooner than I expected.
Nice.
And ArcadeUFO actually opened about 8.5 or 9 months after Einstein's closed.
Uh-huh.
So the time between Einstein's closing and this place opening was a real roller coaster.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
imagine.
But yeah, everything worked out better than I expected.
Yeah, I think we were here a couple of days after it had opened. It was like the grand week opening.
Right, sure enough. And it was a really ridiculous thing. I mean, the turnout was really spectacular. So
Yeah. I actually remember, because it's such a different contrast, me then as compared to now, where I think when we first came here, I was kind of put off by it because I didn't understand the machine layout and everything like that. So I ended up not coming back until November last year.
okay,
When I really kind of started, and I think it was Evo when I kind of started following intently the whole fighting game community, and I started with Evo, and then I went into SoCal regionals and stuff like that. So I was like, well, you know what? I know there's ArcadeUFO. They must have to be doing something like this. So that's around Thanksgiving, Christmas time is when I think we all started coming to visit, and I think that was season 4 Rambat.
okay.
So that's when we kind of started showing up, and then we kind of showed up when we could during season 5, and then obviously we made the jump to really join the community by entering the tournaments and stuff like that.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah. So, but how long have you? I guess my question was, how long have you been doing the Rambats? Like when the season 1 began?
Season 1 was 2009
Okay.
because we started with, of course, Manila Street Fighter 4.
Right.
And so, yeah, the very first season was basically the year that Street Fighter 4 came out on console. That's when we started doing tournaments for it. Because actually, obviously, a lot of people were playing it when it was arcade only, and we were the only place that had it in the area. But also, a lot of people, have this weird mentality that when the console version comes out, less people come to the arcade to play the game. But actually, when the console version of Street Fighter 4 came out, way more people started coming. Like a lot more.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean it's got to be like because the competition was
Right.
out there.
So I think, I think that mentality is a little different than most people think. Yeah, actually, the console version coming out was a big increase in regulars for us. Because I guess so many people, feel more confident when they get back to something.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I was gonna ask, so the arcade's been open for quite a few years. Have you seen more growth, since then, within the gaming scene in general, and also, I guess, in the arcade community?
Within the arcade community, I would say that you know, of course, it was really popular when we first opened because it was new, and then it sort of died down a little bit and evened out, and it's been, you know, relatively stable since, I guess, since a year or so after we opened. As far as the competitive scene and the fighting game scene, I feel that there has been an increase. Like, I think the biggest increase was Street Fighter 4 when it came out on console, and I think since then that's kind of evened out a little bit too.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's gotten bigger or smaller in the past year or two, actually.
Okay. I also wanted to ask, why did you choose the name ArcadeUFO?
The reason I chose ArcadeUFO is because when I was studying abroad in Japan, which was in 2005, my home arcade was an arcade called Game UFO.
Oh, okay, nice.
And so
Just kind of paying homage.
It's paying a homage because the good thing about Game UFO was it was a very community-based arcade, and it was, you know, it had a mom and pop feel to it.
Yeah.
It wasn't corporate owned. It was like a locally owned place, and like, you know, I became friends with all the regulars, and it was one of the arcades where you could go and actually talk to the other people that played there, whereas the big corporate arcades in Japan don't really have that feel.
I see.
So I liked it a lot, and I sort of wanted my arcade to be like that one.
Yeah.
So
Awesome. Is that what influenced the Japanese style arcades? Or?
absolutely. I mean, it was really the only choice because as far as cabinet-based games go, like joystick and button-based arcade games, Japan is the only country that's producing new machines.
Yeah.
So, you know, you could do American-style cabinets if you were going for a classic arcade, but if you want to do new games, then it has to be from Asia.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
So, and incidentally, around that time, a lot of people were switching to Japanese-style parts from American-style parts.
Okay.
Like everybody else, I used American-style joysticks and buttons at first because that's what every arcade had. And there was a transition going from that to Japanese joysticks, and I think for most people that started happening around 2005, 2006.
Okay.
So,
Maybe another one. Another question.
That was pretty much the next one I was going to ask.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just ask one that I was kind of curious about. Like, are there any like older arcades or like rare arcades that you've wanted to get but you haven't been able to get your hands on?
as far as classic games, one game I've been trying to get for like the past, I mean, almost ever since I opened the arcade, is a two-player Simpsons board.
Oh, okay.
This is a very, very rare circuit board because two-player Simpsons was only released in Japan.
Oh, okay.
Because Japan, of course, never had like the big four-player setups like we did.
Gotcha.
They always had the miniature sort of like space-saving cabinets, a lot like the Black Cities and stuff in here. So a lot of older printed circuit boards, like for example Ninja Turtles, you can easily convert it to a two-player board because it has swappable ROMs, like they're socketed, so you can just pull the ROM out and put in a different ROM that's the different version.
Okay.
But for Simpsons, all the four-player circuit boards that were released in the USA and Europe are soldered, not socketed.
Okay.
So it's like a huge mechanical project that I'm not capable of doing to socket a BIOS on an old Simpsons board.
Yeah.
And I've tried taking it to like engineers and stuff, and they'll look at it and be like, "Yeah, I can't do that." So I sort of gave up until I could find a Japanese two-player board.
Okay.
But it's extremely hard to find. So I would say that's the hardest game that I've tried to locate for a long time and haven't been able to find. As far as rare cabinets and stuff like that, the two cabinets that I would really like to get one day is the new Bishibashi game, which is sort of like an analogy a lot of people will understand is WarioWare. It's sort of like a WarioWare type arcade game where there's a bunch of mini games and they're all like really wacky and ridiculous, and it's just a super fun game. It's easy to get hooked on. Like party style game, and it has basically it has a dedicated cabinet for it with just 3 sort of large buttons on each for each player, and it's really a blast.
Okay.
I would say that game, and another game that would be really cool to get my hands on is the table flipping game It's called Super Table Flipper.
It sounds really familiar.
Yeah, you can look it up on Google or whatever, but it's the cabinet where you've actually got like a table, and that's the controller.
Oh, okay.
No, I have seen that.
And
It's like a big thing in Japan right now, isn't it?
Well, I mean,
Or-
I wouldn't call it a big thing, but it's a game that you can find at certain arcades.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically it's a game where it's some really irritating situation, and it builds up, and then you just flip the table as hard as you can.
Oh,
And then it's
okay.
sort of like Katamari Damacy, where like the stuff rolls around, and you get points accumulated for like how much stuff you knock down and combos and stuff like that. So
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
I think it would be a blast to have here.
That would be a lot of fun. So anytime you're back, just
Yeah,
it's a table flipper now.
Yeah, it's like you could go play Marvel, and then you could transition,
Yeah, exactly.
transition immediately from Marvel to table flipper,
Yeah.
and that would be the most fun combination in the world.
Oh, man.
Completely eliminate stick throwing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no more stick throwing. Just play table flipper.
That'd be hilarious. That would work.
You get
out
one
really
free
well.
play with every Marvel entry.
Yeah, right.
I guess my question, of all fighting game, any titles that are out right now, which one is currently your favorite?
My favorite fighting game right now is King of Fighters 13.
Okay, nice.
It's the most fun game that's also the most honest, I guess, right now.
Yeah.
I mean, KOF, it has more of a comeback mechanic than people think it does, because you can blow people away in 1 HD combos, so,
Yeah.
it has the quote-unquote mechanic that a lot of people claim to dislike, but actually secretly like, I think. But that having been said, yeah, KOF is my favorite game right now. Ultimate Marvel 3 is a close second, though.
Close second?
Did you happen to see the King of Fighters movie?
Fortunately, no.
We just did a review. We watched it the other day.
Oh, no.
Just
Oh, my
anybody
God.
out there, just
Yeah,
go watch it.
I'll just avoid it.
It's worse than I even imagined. It's horrible.
And I saw it twice, so just for his
He's
sake.
a masochist.
That's amazing.
How about your least favorite at this point?
My least favorite fighting game right now would have to be, let's see, of all the new games.
Yeah, I'd say new, or even if there's an old one that you just really disliked or were frustrated with.
I didn't like CVS 2.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
I played it for several years, but I don't understand why people like that game.
Really?
Yeah, sorry everyone.
Yeah.
My heart is
Yeah, because I was
broken.
actually watching Ricky Ortiz on one of those streams the other day, and I guess he just showed up to play some casuals in CVS 2, and then he went on about how much he liked it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ricky was one of the best. Basically the best at the game.
Yeah. I mean, there was stuff
It was
he was
between
doing.
him and John Choi.
I never knew Sakura had a dive kick.
Yeah, we were watching the stream. I'm like, she can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like she had a dive kick in most games.
Yeah. I just wasn't aware that she had one.
Maybe we just suck. We don't know all the moves.
Yeah. Is there any reason specifically why you don't like CVS 2?
I guess I didn't like CVS 2 because I didn't like how I really didn't like how tier-based it was. Like, there really were only certain characters you could use.
Yeah.
And I didn't like how so much of the game depended on roll canceling, even though I did it all the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just didn't like, the pace was kind of slow. Like, overall, it's just not my kind of game. I understand the merits of the game, but personally, I didn't enjoy it as much as other games.
Outside of fighting games, like what other games do you like? Like what other genres?
Growing up, I really liked RPGs.
Oh, okay.
RPGs and fighters were like my bread and butter.
Yeah.
I enjoy action games, and I enjoyed a lot of like the main action games that people remember growing up. I loved shooters. I mean, I guess the games that are really memorable to me growing up is like Gradius and
Oh, yeah.
yeah, of course, the early Final Fantasy games and the early Dragon Warrior games. And so, I played a lot of games growing up, not just fighters. I would say that now, most of my gaming does consist of fighters.
Yeah.
But there's occasionally, like, 1 or 2 times a year now when I have time, there'll be that one-player game that I want to play. It's really interesting to me for some other reason. That having been said, though, personally, I'm really exhausted with the RPG genre.
Yeah.
And I just don't, like it doesn't have the same appeal to me that it used to.
Yeah.
So unless a single player game is doing something really unique,
Yeah.
or different from what I've already done, then it usually doesn't catch my interest.
And now a bus.
So Mass Effect 2 is a really interesting game to me. I've been playing that lately for the first time. Catherine last year was another game I enjoyed a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So I like games that have an interesting premise, like single player games that have an interesting premise and an interesting story. But for the most part, a lot of single player genres have been, I don't want to say that they're bad games, but it's hard for me to have the same kind of interest in a new game that I did when I was a kid, and I was more curious and things like that.
Yeah, I'm sure that's very selective with your titles, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm very selective with what I play now, single player wise.
And that being fan of the Modern Warfare that gets rehashed every year.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with the FPS genre, but it's just not for me.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
get any enjoyment out of it.
Gotcha. What was the first competitive tournament you were ever participated in?
The first competitive tournament period?
Yeah.
My first competitive tournament period was 1990 Nintendo World Championships.
Really?
Yes.
Could you elaborate?
Well, 1990 Nintendo Championships, a lot of people know about this because of the legendary cartridge, which is the most valuable video game in existence.
Oh,
It's called 1990 NES World Championships.
Yeah. I was thinking the track and field one.
So, yeah, the 90 US World Championships is generally considered to be the rarest game that, you know, has the highest value or whatever.
Yeah,
That's sort of acquirable. That isn't just like some random beta test or dump or whatever.
Yeah,
Because it was legitimately released, but you could only get it through Nintendo Power. And it was basically like people were selected out of the drawing and received the cartridge. So every single cartridge has like a lineage, like you can see. Yeah, like you can kind of track the owners of the people who previously owned the cartridge.
Yeah.
So anyway, of course, like I said, I was from Northeast Texas, and Dallas was maybe 2.5, 3 hours away from where I lived. So I begged my mom and dad, and my mom took me to Nintendo World Championship qualifiers, which the very first one was that summer in Dallas. It was the very first one. And unfortunately, I did not make it past the preliminary rounds because I was very bad at Tetris. Like it was Super Mario Brothers, Rad Racer, and Tetris.
Yeah.
And it was timed. So you had like 15 minutes, I think. And I did really good in the first two parts, but I was really bad at Tetris.
Yeah.
So I didn't do as well as, you know, I needed to make it out of the qualifiers.
Yeah.
And at the time I was, let's see, 83, 89. So I was 6 years old at the time when I played in those qualifiers. 6 going on 7. That was my first competitive event.
What about first fighting game tournament?
First fighting game tournament was, it was either a local Third Strike tournament at Einstein's Arcade. That was probably the very first one. But my first quote-unquote major, or the first tournament that I traveled sort of out of town for, was Texas Showdown 1.
Oh, wow.
And that was in Houston, Texas at U of H Arcade.
Yeah, they've really expanded too, I guess, since then. 'Cause now they're doing it at a hotel convention. Or they do it...
Yeah, I mean, Showdown now is different from what it was then.
Right.
It's a different person running it. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So since 2006, Showdown has been, or 2005 I think, Showdown has been under different management.
Because they do it jointly with the anime convention now, right? Or was it just this year?
Right. That's how they've been doing it for the past few years.
Okay. What is the craziest moment you had while playing during a tournament?
The craziest moment I had while playing?
Yeah. Whether funny or epic, just anything.
Let's see. It's hard to remember a really good moment. I'm trying to think if there's anything that really stands out or anything like that. I'll say this because it's something I can recently remember.
Yeah.
the last time that Third Strike was at EVO as an official tournament was 2009, and it was 2v2 that year. So in top 8, myself and Mokrin, who was my partner, we played against Alex Baye's team. I don't remember who his partner was. But when I played Alex, he was very, very close to beating me. And I had never lost to Alex in a Third Strike tournament previously. So I had confidence in everything, but he was doing really well.
Yeah.
And it basically came down to the final moment, like last pixel of health. And he basically did he had a knockdown on me, so he had the initiative. He was going to attack when I was getting up.
I'm sorry, what characters were y'all using?
I was using Chun-Li and he was using Ken.
Okay.
And so my prediction was that Vae would do universal overhead.
Yeah.
Because that's what a lot of Third Strike players depend on to get the last hit. Because it's sort of something most people don't expect, but of course I was looking for it.
Yeah.
So I was expecting universal overhead, and then I think a dragon punch after that.
Yeah.
So I basically tried to hit forward to parry the universal overhead, and he did some like random move instead that I blocked.
Yeah.
And he basically missed what he was trying to do. I think he was just trying to do a super.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the long and short of it is, I capitalized on the mistake and sort of reacted and was able to win the match.
Took him
But
out.
yeah, it was very close, and it was one of those situations that was funny because we both did things that we didn't intend to do.
Yeah.
But I sort of like, the ball was dropped and I just happened to pick it up first.
Yeah.
So,
That's awesome. That's pretty cool.
but yeah, it was a good game. But
Awesome.
How about anything like maybe from a crowd perspective where you were just watching the game, and I know there's been a lot of moments like as of late, but anything that you were maybe witness to live that you just kind of, anything that like blew your mind, just a crazy moment?
well, of course, I have been to every EVO, so I did see the Daigo moment live.
Oh, really? Nice.
I saw, man, of course, last year Punko versus Daigo was like the craziest. Like that was the most like hype I've ever seen a crowd in my life personally. And let's see, other things. I mean, there's high moments at every major, but
Yeah.
I would have to say Daigo Punko last year, and yeah, the Daigo moment back then, and I think 2003 was that year. 2004? It was 2004.
Today, yeah.
Yeah.
I believe so.
So, yeah, those were extremely high moments to witness, but I've seen, more than I can count on two hands, so.
Yeah, no, seriously. For sure.
I was just gonna ask, like, of all the pro gamers you've met, like, did you have a personal favorite or anybody that you didn't exactly get along with?
Like anybody, like, if you go somewhere in whatever city in Cali, like, I have to go see so-and-so first.
I mean, it's not really like that because, first of all, there are very, 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 very few pro gamers.
Yeah.
Secondly, everyone that's, a quote-unquote pro, or rather, people who are just well-known because they go to a lot of tournaments, are
Right.
mostly people that I've known for years and years.
Gotcha.
So, for example, I met Flo, Ricky, and Sabin at my very first, big tournament out of state, out of the city, which was Texas Showdown 1 in Houston, because they all came.
Yeah.
And I think Duck was there too, Duck Doe, Marvel 2 player. So, I basically have known most of these guys going to tournaments and going to majors since I was playing competitively. Yeah, Justin I met in 2004, I think, when he came to Texas the first time. And so yeah, like, it's more of like and one of the things that makes fighting game tournaments and fighting game majors so fun is that they're kind of like reunions.
Yeah.
Because you see everybody that you know, and for the most part, people know who I am, and I know who they are.
Yeah.
So there's definitely not any sense of like I really dislike this person. I mean, at majors, everyone's very friendly actually. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really don't have any beef with anybody, and everyone at tournaments is really cool and easy to get along with. So.
Okay, do you think, well, I guess with all these new changes in games, do you think maybe an oversaturation would kind of water down fighting games in the community, or do you think people would still flock to like the main titles like the Capcoms and KOF and Soul Calibur? Or do you think there would be a lot more competition, like maybe come next Evo for the top 6 choices?
Well, I don't think that oversaturation is an issue. Some people think it is, but I think those people are wrong.
Okay.
So there have been tons of fighting games coming out since the dawn of time.
Yeah.
And I think that everybody has this impression that a fighting game has to be the most played game at EVO to be a success, which is really not the case, because like any single-player game, or rather like any video game that you make from a business perspective,
Yeah.
the game has to sell X amount to make up for the costs it takes to make, right?
Yeah.
So if, very similarly, like if I'm making Metal Gear 6 or whatever, and let's see, what's another really popular action game? Like,
Mass Effect.
Sure, Mass Effect. And let's say I'm making Metal Gear 6 and I see that Mass Effect 4 is coming out on, July of 2014 or whatever, then naturally I'm not going to make my release date July 2014.
Yeah.
I'm going to move it a few months away from that, because it's going to impact sales. But fighting games are no different. If anything, the problem is that a lot of fighting game makers now want their fighting game to be, like every fighting game developer is thinking our fighting game can be one of the most popular fight games in Evo.
Like the new Street Fighter.
Right, like the new Street Fighter. But nothing can be the new Street Fighter. Only Street Fighter can be the new Street Fighter.
Right.
Just like nothing can be the new Tekken. Only Tekken can be the new Tekken.
Yeah.
So, if anything, I think that what fighting game developers need to realize is that not every game needs like a huge multi-million-dollar budget with cutscenes and crazy 3D graphics, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I think a very good example recently has been Skullgirls, which seems to have been a big success.
Yeah.
And of course, I have no idea what their budget was or anything like that, but it's a small company, obviously, and they didn't have a whole ton of people working on the project. So, but it seems like sales have been good, and it seems like they at least matched their expectations.
Yeah.
So, if anything, I would like more fighting game developers to focus on smaller projects and games that can be fun as a casual fighting game or for a short time. But I don't think every fighting game needs to be, the Metal Gear or the Street Fighter 4 or whatever fighting games.
Yeah. And just to come full circle, last question. Is that any reason why you really flocked to KOF? Like, do you see any of that?
I've always been interested in King of Fighters,
Yeah.
but in particular, King of Fighters 13 came out at a good time.
Yeah.
Street Fighter 4 had already been out for a while, and it's fortunately it's been featured at EVO,
Yeah.
so a lot more people took interest in the game as a result.
Yeah.
And it's a really fantastic and fun game to play right now.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course.
FubarDuck.
You bet.
Yeah, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Yeah, pleasure meeting you.
All right. Mr. Walls Rowdy, thank you very much.
We out.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, man.